Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the January 23rd meeting of the Ann Arbor City Council. If you're able, please rise and join us for a moment of silence, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Would our clerk please call the roll of council?
Councilmember Dish,
Here.
Councilmember Harrison,
Here.
Councilmember Song,
Here.
Councilmember Watson,
Here.
Councilmember Medina,
Here.
Councilmember Ghazi Edwin,
Here.
Mayor Taylor,
Here.
Councilmember Iyer,
Here.
Councilmember Ackman,
Here.
Councilmember Briggs,
Here.
Councilmember Cornell. Here. We have a quorum.
May I have a motion, please, to approve the agenda? Moved by Councilmember Iyer, seconded by Councilmember Briggs. Discussion of the agenda. All in favor? Opposed? The agenda is approved. We have communications today from our city administrator.
No, Mayor.
In the absence of introductions, we'll move on to public comment. Public comment is an opportunity for members of the public to speak to council and the community about matters of municipal interest. To speak at public comment general time, one needs to have signed up in advance by contacting our city clerk. Speakers in all cases will have 3 minutes in which to speak, so please pay close attention to the time. Our clerk here in the room and online will notify you when 30 seconds are remaining and when your time has expired. When your time has expired, please conclude your remarks and cede the floor. Our first speaker today is Michelle Hughes.
Michelle Hughes is on Zoom. Go ahead.
Hi, I'm calling about the East Medical Center Drive Bridge, AKA That Damn Bridge. And I'm glad that some work has been done to make the proposal better, and I'm glad that some people are willing to rebid this project rather than jumping off the cliff of committing us entirely to car culture with no consideration for pedestrian use or other use or non-motorized use. But I wish that the proposal could be slightly stronger. I wish that we were not adding a lane for cars at all. Even if we were coming up with wider sidewalks, which is what's proposed in the substitute resolution today, which I certainly hope you'll pass that rather than the original proposal. But I think it would be even better if we were not widening the bridge at all, or if we were to widen the bridge and make it, if we were widening the bridge, I want it to be clear to the new design contract that it will only be for the purpose of non-motorized transit, and that we will not be widening the bridge for any car uses. Like it says in the substitute proposal, this is car uses of the bridge goes against our non-motorized transit plan, our transit plan, our 820 plan, and this is the wrong time to be committing to car culture for decades to come. And so I hope that we see a version of this which will not widen the bridge, except for insofar as it's required to widen the sidewalks. Other than that, thanks for having the courage to rework the design at least some. I think that we can do better, and I hope to see that tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Ralph McKee.
Mr. McKee, phone number 556. Go ahead.
Can you hear?
Yes, we can.
My name is Ralph McKee, 5th Ward. I'm speaking RA CA1 and CA3, which award major contracts to CA Hall and Bailey Excavating. I sent a detailed email with a link to former Councilmember Nelson's meticulous analysis. I hope you had a chance to read them. If at all possible, these contracts should be postponed until a thorough evaluation is made. The 4 contracts described in my email illustrate how flawed implementation of our best value policy has already potentially wasted almost $1.6 million in just 8 months over competing qualified lower bids and appears to have chilled competitive bidding. This is real money. Failure to ask hard questions would be the height of fiscal irresponsibility. Ask yourself this: what are we getting for that $1.6 million? I recognize the community voted to approve best value. I had mixed feelings about it then, and unfortunately it looks like some problems raised then have now occurred. It's your responsibility to deal with them. Look at the CA Hall contract. It's $755,000, $750,000 higher than the low bid. Staff's using a 5-factor scoring system for awarding contracts. I'll leave aside for now the issue of weighting items like worker development equally with cost and qualifications. Let's look at the detail. CA Hall scored 83, the lower bidder 80. That small scoring difference was a 4-point difference in social equity and sustainability. Ask this: what was that based on? Then ask, what are we getting for that $755,000? There might be good answers, but those questions need to be asked. Next, look at the August $837,000 AZ Schmina contract, $279,000 higher, 50% higher than the low bid. AZ scored 74, the other bidder 67. The difference was local workers, an apprentice program, and better benefits. Nice things, but consider this: you get bids for a house renovation, $300,000 local contract, another bid $200,000. Tell me, would you pay the extra $100,000, 50% higher, assuming, of course, you can afford it? If not, why should we? If the spread was close, it makes sense, but not 50%. On the Bailey contract, unlike the typical multiple bids on large contracts of this type, this time Bailey was the only bidder. Last year, if you remember, Council Members Iyer and Redina twice convinced you to override staff recommendations to hire lower bidders in favor of Bailey. 2 well-established local contractors with lots of past city jobs have said since they might not even spend the time and dollars working up bids if this process like that continues to be used. I can't blame them. And now it looks like no one wants to even compete with Bailey.
30
So
seconds.
it appears in less than a year, implementation of best value has resulted in potential much higher bids, $1.6 million, $2.5 million on an annual basis, and has completely eliminated competitive bidding of the work that Bailey likes to do. Who knows how much that will eventually cost us? Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Tom Stolberg.
Mr. Stolberg, phone number 534, go ahead.
Thank you. Good evening. This is Tom Stolberg calling from Lowertown in Ann Arbor. I'm calling in about C1, and I hope you've all read the very thorough report. So I just want to make a mention from page 19 of that report about the Robert and Irma Hayden House Historic District. The Robert and Irma Hayden House Historic District Study Committee finds that the proposed historic district, Robert and Irma Hayden House Historic District, sounds redundant, is significant under National Register of Historic Places, Criterion B, as it illustrates the lives of persons significant in our past within a local, state, or national historic context. I support this and hope that you'll vote in favor of this. We do have some other single resource districts within our city. Northern Brewery, Cobblestone Farm come to mind. This is a wonderful way to recognize, not just preserve, but recognize architecture and people and the history of our community. We have our bicentennial coming up in 2024, so I'm hoping that there'll be some other recognition similar to this that will be highlighted as part of that as well. And by the way, I was on the Historic District Commission for 6 years, chair for 2, and on the board of Cobblestone Farm for 2 years. So I speak from that perspective, but I speak here supporting this as an individual person. I'd also like to thank the last caller for their remarks on that particular item, I believe 2 items maybe. And I also want to speak about CA9. And I suggest that you pull this for discussion from the consent agenda. I'm not against it, but just I think the discussion of it would be valuable to everybody. We have a $2 million contribution to the Affordable Housing Fund as part of the PUD, and they're looking to actually have 15 units on site, which would be the right math, I'm guessing. And the question is, as a community, what do we prefer? Do we prefer to have the units on site when we have these type of developments, or do we prefer the money paid in lieu? Rather than me telling you right now, I think the discussion should be opened up, and let's hear from you. And it probably is an ongoing discussion. Recently announced was a Five Corners PUD at State and Packard, and they're going to be paying a few $1 million in the Affordable Housing Fund. So if we'd rather have the units on site or not, that'd be a
30
discussion to
seconds.
have, and something that the community and you as our representatives should be communicating with the developer about. People know from my past speeches that I am a proponent of flexible development options, including but not limited to PUDs. So I look forward to us having actual affordable housing units built on site at this development, and then the best decisions made at some of the other PUDs in terms of where the money goes to actual units being built or into the Affordable Housing Fund, which can be leveraged. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Peter Letzman.
Mr. Mayor and members of council, good evening. My name is Peter Letzman, and I'm the president of Scenic Michigan, a nonprofit organization here in the state of Michigan. Contrary to some of the other people who are here and who I've heard this evening, I'm not here to whine. I'm not here to complain. I'm not here to gripe, and I don't want anything from you folks. To the contrary, I'm here to present Scenic Michigan's Scenic Hero Award. This award is given in recognition to someone, an individual, a company, a group, who signifies a lasting contribution to the preservation, the protection, and the enhancement of the scenic character here in Michigan, on its roads, in the environment, in its communities. And this year's award goes to Councilmember Erica Briggs. Erica came to my attention about 5 years ago as she applied for the position of Executive Director of Scenic Michigan. And I was very concerned when she applied because I looked at her resume, and her resume showed that she was a community activist. She was involved in biking, not the Hells Angel type, but in biking. She was a runner. She was a camper. She was a cook. She was a traveler. She was a mother and a wife and an academic, having completed her master's and was working on her PhD. But as it said, if you want a job to get done, give it to a busy person. And we did. And I'm very glad that we did. During her time as executive director, Erica monitored state and federal litigation, the lawsuits that are filed by the billboard companies against municipalities and that regulate the billboards and signs. She participated in developing of local ordinances and state legislation. She spread the word about Scenic Michigan in person, in the media, and electronically. And she organized and promoted our Scenic Michigan photo contest. And those of you who have not looked at it, everyone here, take a look at scenicmichigan.org and take a look at some of the winning photographs that are displayed here of Scenic Michigan. And if you're interested, submit your photographs to our contest also. And most importantly, for a nonprofit, and you folks have worked with nonprofits, the most important thing is that Erica made sure that we stayed afloat financially. So, as a manager and the attorney knows, it's much easier to follow, or the administrator, it's much easier to follow a mediocre person than it is a excellent achiever. So now our new successor as executive director has some pretty big footsteps. I was going to say shoes, but I can't do that. Some pretty big footsteps to follow. For all of this, all of these reasons, and for the loyalty and devotion that she has shown to Scenic Michigan, I am pleased to announce that the Scenic Michigan Board of Directors has designated Erica Briggs as this year's Scenic Hero, and we present her with this small token as a remembrance of this event.
Thank you.
All the contamination we have in Ann Arbor, which is growing, thanks to Mr. Mayor and
Thank
his
you.
buddies.
Our,
What a
our next
joke.
speaker is,
What a freaking joke.
please, our next speaker is Jai Lewis.
Hello,
Jai Lewis, my
everyone.
apologies.
Thank you for the opportunity to come up here and speak. I won't be long. I said everything I had to say in my letter. Did everyone get one? And when I looked up on the internet, I seen Miss Erica Briggs and her bio that she's an activist, you know, out in the community, and I liked that. I apologize for some names on here that I put because I didn't know. Mr. Matthew and Miss Carey, I just assumed they was part of your committee when I was Googling, but I did get two right, Miss Erica and Mr. Christopher. So I'm good with that. And so I just want to say is, I'm a mother that's very determined. I raised a lot of kids of my own, and I had to get creative raising those kids and make them happy. And so I gave you a copy of my news article that I made down in Muskegon. And it was big and popular. I drew 500 to 600 kids. I mean, it got so popular that people just got comfortable and dropped all their little ones at my house. And so I just like helping, making an impact on people. My struggles don't stop me from having a warm heart. I'm not here to ask for anything, but what I am asking, I don't know how Ann Arbor do they little thing as far as blocking off the streets. I've been riding and looking, and I seen one street called Arbor off a stadium that possibly could be blocked off in the summertime with children's activities and everything, right next door to where Lewis's Jewelry used to be, and they just recently moved. I also went in there and spoke with them about the ideal, and they thought it was beautiful. Anything they can do to help me, they be willing. Gyros down there on Dexter and Stadium. I just don't know which end would be legally to block off, but they also was very supportive. So I'm a woman, I'm not afraid to move around and reach out and talk and speak. I had all those kids, so I had to speak, you know, and keep up with everybody, and that's it. If someone could let me know if I'm able to do this, and I get it going on every year and make everybody happy. Children and families, and uniting everybody and making everybody have fun. I would like to connect with Miss Erica Briggs on some ideas if that's possible. My name and number is on here. Give me a call, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Mojan Savabe-Asafami.
What was the word that he said? Pleasant, Michigan? What?
Scenic.
Scenic, Michigan. What a joke. We are sitting on the largest dioxin contamination in the world, and this city council and these city council people are responsible to do something about it. They have majorly failed to do anything about it. Now we are supposed to offer this lady who has done nothing to help the pollution in this town, offer her all kinds of praises? Is that crazy or not? Hello, Ann Arbor. I'm not here to talk about that, but I am standing in front of our mayor here, who was at the January 12th event where Ms. Kamala Harris was here to talk about global warming and how they are intrigued to fix the planet. I ask you, this mayor has been sitting here watching Gilman dioxin grow by leaps and bounds. Is he someone that we would believe cares a goddamn thing about pollution or the integrity of the planet, if anybody believes that, they just have themselves to blame, because nobody in their right mind would believe that this guy cares anything about Earth's integrity and safety. Aside from that, I come here often to talk about the rights of the Palestinian people. I wonder if Mr. Mayor heard the voices of Michigan students who protested outside of the Rackham Auditorium, saying, not a nickel, not a dime, no more money for Israel's crime. Mr. Mayor, did you hear them? Answer me, did you hear those students saying, not a nickel, not a dime, no more money for Israel's crime? Because the same students passed resolutions saying, no more money for Israel. The same students have been coming here demanding something to be done about this apartheid state of Israel. And you have turned a blind eye to all of them. You have ignored 3,000 people signing petitions asking you to do the right thing. And every day that you close your eyes to the rights of the Palestinian people, more children are dead. Do you hear me? There are children dying with our tax dollars. There are children in Palestine who are dying, and you continue to ignore them while you tell us you care about Ukrainians. You're a liar. You're a racist, and you don't give a damn about the environment, and I know it. If nobody knows it, I know it. And I will be sure to come here and tell everyone until everybody understands who you are and what you stand for. You are a racist. You didn't hear those students, but they were there. You will hear them. This will happen. This phony baloney city council will vote to stop military aid to Israel.
Thank you.
Do it sooner rather than later, because you will save your own humanity.
Thank you.
Okay, you can start the clock. My name's Blaine Coleman, and I am here also to speak against military aid to Israel. Now, this city council, the Ann Arbor City Council, for just about 40 years now, has been blocking every resolution to cut aid to Israel, to the apartheid state of Israel. Since January of 1984, this racist Ann Arbor City Council has thrown all its weight against every resolution that would cut aid to Israel. And you see Israel massacring Palestinians by the thousands, by the hundreds, by the dozens, by the ones, twos, and threes, almost every day. You see Israel has just appointed a national security minister named Ben Gvir, who is in charge of the Israeli police in Israel and in the occupied West Bank. He had a portrait, for years, he had a portrait of a mass murderer hanging proudly in his living room, in his home. That is who is in charge of the triggers in Israel. That's who has his hand on all those triggers against the Palestinian people. And your tax dollars are fueling all this mass murder against the Palestinians, and you have thrown all your weight for years and years, you, the Ann Arbor City Council, against any resolution that would object to military aid to Israel. This is really different from what happened when Larry Hunter was on City Council. He fought for a resolution to boycott the apartheid state of South Africa, and he won. It was a fight. It was not unanimous, but he won. This is something you ought to do, have to do, to stop the racist state of Israel from murdering more Palestinians. Larry Hunter was not wrong to push for a resolution to boycott the apartheid state of South Africa, and all those thousands of people who have approached you over 40 years to do the same against the apartheid state of Israel, those thousands of people are not wrong either. approve the 7-word resolution that you've been sitting on for so many years. Approve the resolution that says we are against military aid to Israel. Stop being a dog for the Ku Klux Klan state of Israel. And there goes Jen Iyer walking out, coward that she is. She took money from old friends of the
Thank
Israel
you.
Defense Forces, remember, in her
Thank you.
campaign.
Our next speaker is Larry Deck.
And she's back. Coward that she is. Coward that she is.
She's not just coward.
I'm Larry Deck. I'm speaking as an individual tonight. I'm on the board of Walk Bike Washtenaw, but we haven't had a time to put together an organizational statement on your latest proposal that's before you tonight. It's been interesting to follow the progress of this project, the sad progress over the last year. Walk Bike Washtenaw has tried to represent the public interest and tried to represent what's in Ann Arbor's and the university's non-motorized transportation plans and carbon neutrality plans. So far, we haven't been successful, but we hope to be. The earlier statement, I hope you had a chance to look at what I sent you earlier today. The WBWC statement from about a year ago talked about what's needed: widening the west sidewalk on the bridge by about 5 feet and building the long planned trail loop under the bridge. Widening the sidewalk would allow room for bidirectional bike lanes and a pedestrian lane as an important part of a campus-to-campus bike route if we ever want to make a safe route between the campuses for biking. However, council, by a 6-5 vote about a year ago, directed the designer to proceed with a bad design, which would actually narrow the west sidewalk from 10.5 feet to 8 feet. Now you've been presented with a proposal which, as I understand it, would narrow it from 10.5 feet to 10 feet. So it's less bad, but it's still not good, and it's not what's needed. One thing that I'm confused about in the proposal before you is the cost issue. It would authorize $2 million to widen the bridge by 2 feet, as I understand it. We were told about a year ago that it was estimated to cost about $500,000 to widen it by 5 feet because of the need for an extra support beam. So it seems odd that we'd be paying more for less, paying 3 times as much or 4 times as much for less than half as much widening. So that ought to be clarified, what the issue with the cost is there. Also, before you, as I understand it, the city would be paying the first $500,000, first $500,000, and then the university would pick up any additional $1.5 million up to $2 million. If that's right, and if it turns out that the cost is only about $500,000, then the city has been taken to the cleaners on this deal. I think you ought to look into that cost issue. You know, we're on the verge of making a $10 million mistake on a long-term investment here, when really we should do it right. And if we can't do the bridge right on a long-term investment like this, we should reject this proposal until we can do the design right and build it right. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Louis Vasquez.
Greetings, Ann Arbor City Council. I'm Luis Vasquez. I live at 909 Barton Drive. I'm a resident of Upper Lower Town. I'm a former healthcare worker at the University of Michigan. That was about 30 years ago or so. But in terms of CA1 and CA2, I support pedestrian and bicyclist infrastructure and hope to see more of that occur around the city, but including this problematic intersection and bridge. When I was working at U of M, these were always treacherous crosswalks, okay? Treacherous, no matter what time of day or night. Now, the university, if they want what they want, they should pay more for what they want, okay? And not be subsidized by the Ann Arbor taxpayers. And in terms of CA9, I support this proposal, this action, and like when developers put forward affordable housing options. I think this is the best course moving forward. What I really wanted to talk about was the library lot. And I wanted to echo some of Dan Adams's commentary from a few weeks ago and the proposals that he is pushing forward. And I will also be writing some email to City Council expressing my views on what should happen with the library lot. I think that Ann Arbor City Council should put forward proposals to either modify or replace the amendment to the city charter from 2018. And I'm a fan of putting money and effort into improving Liberty Plaza, because that is our commons too. The library is our commons. Kempf House is our commons too. And if we spin our wheels constantly, I mean, I've been an observer of the center of the city and the library conservancy, et cetera, meetings. And I'm frustrated by the amount of time and effort and money that has been put towards that for 4 years now, over 4 years, and we have nothing. We have nothing. I appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Are there communications from council? Councilor Briggs?
Thanks. I do want to say thanks to Peter Letzman for coming tonight and presenting me with the Scenic Hero Award. Few comments on that. We're fortunate to live in a beautiful state with such beautiful urban and rural spaces. However, our land use policies at the local...
Ma'am, please do not interrupt.
Our land use policies at the local and state level often obscure its beauty and negatively impact the environment and our own health. As Lady Bird Johnson once stated, first we shape our buildings and then they shape us. The same is true of our highways, our parks, our public buildings, and the environment we create. They shape us. Later in the agenda, we'll be discussing the impact of how our public infrastructure shapes us. So we'll talk more about this tonight. It was an honor to work for Scenic Michigan and work to advance better land use policies across the state, and I'm happy to say that we've been advancing that work here in Ann Arbor too. Over the last 2 years, we've passed model sign and lighting ordinances. These may seem like small details, but together they have a profound impact on the appearances of our public and private spaces and a profound impact on our night skies. Limiting light pollution means even kids growing up in a city can look up at night and wish upon a star. There's more work to be done all across the state, of course, and I'm grateful for all the work that's being done by Scenic Michigan, by progressive urban planners, and by community advocates across the state. So thanks to Scenic Michigan for being here tonight. And also a few other things. Wanted to say thanks to all of the residents that came out to our Councilmember Cornell and I's coffee hour yesterday. It was a nice turnout. Good to see, and happy birthday to the mayor.
Councilmember Iyer.
Thank you. As city council members, we, part of our job is to listen to criticism from residents, and I always take that very seriously, and I appreciate when our residents give us feedback in terms of how we're doing our jobs. However, there are a couple of people who come in here on a regular basis and speak things that are unimaginable in terms of their racism. And I'm going to ask you to sit down. This is an anti-Semitic, this is a racist and anti-Semitic cartoon. It uses traditional anti-Semitic tropes of blood libel and vampirism to depict people on city council, some of whom are Jewish. That is disgusting and reprehensible. In addition, it depicts our African American colleagues as wearing leashes and being driven by a white man. This is racist and reprehensible. And the reason I get up often when these people are speaking is anytime someone is compared to a dog or dehumanized, I will get up and walk out in solidarity with my colleagues and in solidarity with my Jewish neighbors throughout this city. This is disgusting behavior, and it needs to stop right now.
Councilmember Ghazi Edwin.
Thank you. I just wanted to draw my colleagues' attention to item E2 under the clerk's report. It's a resolution being brought forth by the Human Rights Commission at our next meeting titled Resolution to Prohibit Government-Issued ID Discrimination. Both Councilmember Lynn Song and myself will be co-sponsoring it, and we welcome other co-sponsors as well. And we're excited to share more about the resolution and how it will impact our community at our next meeting. Thank you.
Councilmember Adina.
Thank you, Mayor. I also want to thank my colleague, Councilmember Iyer, for her remarks. It's something that's been on my mind for a long time. The latest depiction is particularly troubling because of the, and as you can hear once again, while we sit silently, we continue to have interruptions from these individuals who their entire purpose is to create a mockery of all of this. And so I agree it needs to stop. I unfortunately don't believe that it will. And so I appreciate the solidarity with our colleagues who are constantly being targeted, particularly the last comment, or the last depiction. I also want to express to neighbors in Ward 3 the gratitude that I have for them joining Councilmember Ghazi Edwin and I at our last coffee hour. Our next one will be February 19th at 11 a.m. at Argus Farm Stop on Packard. Thank you.
Councilmember Dish.
Thank you. I wanted to say that I attended a very productive public forum for the unarmed response effort over Zoom on Thursday. I think that was the last one of these series of meetings, and I'm really looking forward to the results, which reflect, I think, broad support for this effort. I wanted to let Ward 1 residents know that tree trimming is scheduled for the canopy over Broadway Street between Traver Creek Crossing and Plymouth Road. Trimming will begin on February 6th, and we need to do this to ensure the 18-foot clearance needed for construction vehicles. So watch out for that.
Further communication from council. Councilmember Cornell.
Thank you. I wanted to bring to people's attention that the Citizen Climate Lobby and the OSI are hosting a panel on low-carbon housing options research, and there will be presentations as well as a Q&A session. That will be on February 22nd from 6 to 8 p.m. at the downtown library, or you can participate by Zoom. There's more information on the OSI website for that. I also wanted to share from a recent DDA meeting this past week. We heard a lot about how the DDA is investing in monitoring traffic, not just bicyclists, cars, but pedestrians as well, to get a comprehensive analysis of how traffic flows in and out of the city and within our downtown, so that we can have informed decisions as we make construction and improvement projects as they come to this body. And the other thing I wanted to say is thank you to all of our Ward 5 neighbors who've joined Ward 5 on the Conquer the Cold Challenge. And as sad as it is to no longer compete against Ward 4, we've had so much enthusiasm for it that we are actually going up a category in our number of participants. It is not too late to sign up, and so if you're interested in doing that, you can get information about that on the DDA website as well.
Councilmember Song.
I just want to reflect a little bit on the calls I've been receiving since early Sunday morning on the shooting in Monterey Park from a number of Ann Arbor Asian American residents My aunt was in the area and left at 8 p.m. that evening, so I have family in the area. Monterey Park is one of the first ethnic enclaves of the Asian American community. It's known historically as being a place that's majority Asian American, a place to shop and eat and feel safe and welcome. This community has extended family and loved ones also there, so it's been really heartening to see folks come together to make sure that family and friends are okay in the area. But it's also, I think, a moment of reflection. It's Lunar New Year. This is a time where we reflect on where we come from, who we come from, share trauma and histories. And the hope is that we would have a healthier, happier, more prosperous new year. I just want to share Senator Stephanie Chang's words and her commitment to working in the legislature with the Asian Pacific American Legislative Caucus for gun reform. And now that, and the greater odds of that actually happening within the state of Michigan, for safe storage, expanded background checks, and red flag laws. To expand a little bit on the Lunar New Year celebrations, the Sweetwaters on Plymouth and Green will be having a lion dance this Sunday at 1 p.m. I've invited Representative Debbie Dingle to this. This is a community celebration. I hope you come out with your children and loved ones. And then I'll have a coffee hour extending Lunar New Year celebrations with traditional crafts. Sorry, tea hour, not coffee, at Traverwood from 3:30 to 5. So I welcome everyone, and I look forward to seeing you there.
Councilor Watson.
Well, I just wanted to say I look forward to joining Lynn at that at both her at the New Year celebration and also at coffee hour. One of my favorite events from this past campaign season was the Asian American African American Solidarity Picnic, which has had huge support from this community, and just seeing that solidarity, I think we just have to keep that going in the days ahead. I wanted to thank the Ward 2 residents who came out to my coffee hour yesterday. They braved the snow, but we had a very good turnout. And I'd also like to just thank Dan Kelly, the Shelter Association, and food gatherers who helped lead a tour on Friday for council members Ackman, Harrison, Song, and Ghazi Edwin, and we got to tour the Delana Center and see a little bit about, just to be there in person was very important, and then also to hear about the needs in the current environment and just the difficulty of securing housing in our community. So that was a very important thing, and I think that'll influence us as we go forward. So thank you.
Further communication?
I'd like to pull CA1 for further consideration.
CA1. Further discussion of consent agenda. Nothing approved.
Can we pull CA3?
Further discussion of consent agenda. All in favor? Opposed? Consent agenda is approved with the exception of CA1, CA3, with 11 council members present, all voting in the affirmative. Thus that, pardon me? Thank you. Thus satisfying the 8-vote requirement with respect to CA6 and CA7. CA1, resolution to approve a construction contract with CA Hull for the East Medical Center Drive Bridge Rehabilitation and Widening Project, the amount of $9,657,770.26. Moved by Councilmember Ackman, seconded by Councilmember Radin. Discussion, please, of CA1. Councilmember Ackman.
Now I'd like to move to amend CA1 by replacing it with the staff-prepared substitute resolution attached to the agenda.
Is there a second? Second by Councilmember Briggs. Discussion. Is that a friendly amendment? I'm declaring it as friendly to the body. Councilmember Ackman, you still have the floor with respect to the modified amendment. Or pardon me, the modified resolution.
Should I go, or does staff want to do a present introduction first?
That is an excellent point, and you are correcting me. Mr. Mahoney, is there anyone from staff who would like to speak with respect to the substitute resolution?
Thank you, Mayor. We do have Mr. Hutchinson, Mr. Hess, and Ms. Chan available before they come on to do the response to the questions that we received. The substitute proposal that's in front of you this evening represents several conversations that we've had with the university to arrive at what you have for your consideration. I would be remiss if I didn't express appreciation to our staff and to those at the university for the many sessions we had to come up with it. The financial arrangement that you see indicated within the document is where it is, with the big assumption on what will happen when it gets rebid a year from now. And with that, Mr. Hutchinson's available to respond to the questions we received.
Thank you. Yes, we have several questions we received recently. I'm just going to go through the questions and provide some answers where we can here. First question was, roughly how much does staff think it would cost to include barriers like those on the Broadway Bridge? Unfortunately, we have not had time to come up with an estimate for that, so we do not have a good answer to that at this moment. Second question, can the signs that are currently placed on the sidewalks instead be situated on the exterior walls of the bridge? Answer to that is yes, and the current design does accommodate that. Third question, how can we ensure that the new design follows best practices for traffic calming and Vision Zero principles? The previous mention of slip lanes, for example, is concerning. In response to that, I would say that the design that we will undertake here, presuming that this is passed, will be reviewed by the city transportation staff and shared as well with the Transportation Commission for their feedback. The current design, as well as any future designs for the bridge, would not include any slip lanes. Fourth question, how can we ensure that the widening stops here, i.e. doesn't continue into the intersection and road beyond? If any widening of the Fuller East Medical Center Drive intersection were to be considered in the future, it would be addressed as part of the capital improvement project for that intersection. And that project is currently listed as on hold in the recently approved CIP. And then finally, how were width dimensions arrived at? The width of the bridge was determined based on adding a single 11-foot wide lane and maintaining the existing 11-foot wide travel lanes as well. And then a redistribution of the existing 10.5-foot sidewalks to create the wider shared use facility that the design currently shows on the east side of the bridge. That's all the questions we received most recently, and myself and staff will be here and available to answer any further questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Further discussion of the main motion as amended. Councilor Iyer.
Thank you. One of the things that I think we tried to get at last time this came around, and unfortunately it got overshadowed by some other issues, but when we are looking at traffic studies for new developments, we often are presented with data, traffic study data, that shows, projected traffic volumes. Here's what would happen if, for example, a development was approved or not, and the impact that it would have on a particular intersection or road. And I understand that traffic studies were done here, or at least the modeling was done for future expectations in terms of the hospital's growth, et cetera. And yet I haven't seen any traffic studies like we get for considering developments in terms of with this development, we expect you might have to wait at a stoplight for another 10 seconds, that kind of thing. So has any of that type of study been done here?
Mr. Hutchinson?
Yes, I mean, there was lots of traffic modeling done as part of this project. And typically for capital projects like this, we don't produce like a traffic study report like you see for a development. It's usually more internal for helping to develop and inform the design of the project. That said, I mean, such some kind of report could be developed. It's just not typical practice of something that we do for a capital project.
I guess in terms of trying to decide whether a widening is needed or not, that's part of the set of information that I wonder if we need. The other thing I would wonder, just in terms of the cost of the barrier, can we get a ballpark estimate of what that might cost? I mean, are we talking $500,000? Are we talking $1 million?
I can get a ballpark estimate. I didn't have time to get that from our consultant before this meeting.
Okay, gotcha.
I can't even give you a ballpark right now at the moment.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Further discussion? Councilor Ackman.
Yeah, I'm still confused about the distribution of space. From what I understand, the new resolution would be adding an additional beam, and I think that's where a lot of the expense is coming from. And I think as one of our commenters pointed out, I just don't understand why we're only getting 2 additional feet from adding that. So if you could just help me understand the engineering, I would appreciate it.
The additional beam, most of the additional cost is because we have to add a beam to the bridge. That is correct. Adding an additional beam to the bridge would give us some flexibility to add a certain amount of additional width. I don't know off the top of my head how much that is, but it could be a little bit more than 2 feet. The additional beam is the biggest jump, and then every additional foot you add beyond that is an increase as well, just not as much of a jump as that would be. We could add additional width onto it, but the cost estimates that we've come up with so far wouldn't include that extra width.
Okay, but you're saying that you could potentially have extra width with the existing beam that you plan to put in for the 2 feet, I think.
Yes, there could be additional width done. I don't know what the outer limit of that is, but it would come at additional cost as well.
Okay, then can I ask how you came to the 10 and the 13?
There was some information out there, or there was some suggestions out there that that the west side wanted that. There was a desire to widen the west side back out to at least what it was previously, and that's where that comes from.
I believe it's 10.5 right now. So I guess that's why my question is
10.5, yes. So other 6 inches is not going to make that much of a difference. So it could be 10. We could widen it back out to 10.5 feet or so, and I don't think that would change much.
Good to know. Thank you.
Further discussion? Councilor Iyer. Councilor Iyer, Cornell and Briggs. Councilor Iyer.
Okay. One other question, and I think this is probably more directed towards our city administrator. Is there anything in this agreement with U of M that would prevent us from doing a road reconfiguration on the bridge in the future? I.e., for example, if it were to be determined in the future that we wanted to put in dedicated separated bike infrastructure or some other, future use that we may not be conceiving of right now.
That was not a part of the discussions. The only thing that we talked about specifically was the protective shield, probably called something else, but if it's going on the sidewalk, the university had no issues with it, but if we're talking about putting it in the roadway, they did. but we didn't talk about down the road, if there were other ideas, what that might mean. I can say anything that's added beyond this point would be 100% city cost.
Like any of our other roads.
Yes.
Yeah, right. So we retain the right to reconfigure the road if we decide we want to do so.
We have the right, yes. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Cornell.
Thank you. I think the questions that both Councilmember Iyer and Councilmember Ackman asked the additional information on, I think that those are really good questions. But I didn't hear, and maybe I missed it, the timing for the two things that were discussed in terms of road modeling around development, and then a cost for additional width and barriers. How far off are we talking to have this type of information to consider this project on?
For the, you mean timing of when we can have that information back to you?
Yes.
Yeah, I don't think that would take very long. The modeling, all the modeling that has happened, the modeling has been done. It's just a matter of packaging it up and putting it in some kind of report. I imagine a few weeks on that, and the cost estimate for the barrier, I don't think would take any longer than that either.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Dohoney?
Just for clarification, I'm sure most people are up on this, but not everyone has heard all of the details. We're talking about a project that will have to be rebid, and we're also talking about pushing out construction by 1 year. So information that we have now may or may not be relevant by the time we actually get down to seeing the bid, getting the information back. This project will now span over 3 consecutive fiscal years before it's done.
Councilmember Briggs.
Yeah, I know we received some information on this, but if staff could clarify what the reasoning behind the increased cost from last year, why it was shared that it was $500,000 this year and it's at 2.1 million. I know that would be helpful for the public.
The estimate to widen the bridge from last year was a very, very rough estimate before our consultant had even started designing the project. So, and over the course of that time, we've also seen massive increases in construction costs as well. So it's a combination of those two things. We're seeing higher prices, and it was an estimate done with very little information to start with.
Okay, I'm going to go a little further, I think, to provide a little more clarity. As well, we received information, one, we're needing to go back out and redesign this, so the additional design cost is, we're paying for an additional design, whereas last year we were determining what the design was going to be at that point. And so it's a new design we're requesting, which is an additional $650,000 estimated. Additional construction cost is estimated around $850,000 now, as opposed to $500,000 last year, which we're seeing construction costs increase each year. So that makes sense. And there's a project contingency of $505,000. So that's why there's a difference in terms of the cost estimates this year versus last. For myself, obviously I expressed a lot of thoughts about this project last year, which I think most are familiar with. But to reiterate, I think it's important that the infrastructure that we build reflects one, our policy priorities, our transportation priorities, our climate action priorities. We cannot expect behavioral shifts unless our infrastructure supports that. So I'm glad to see the movement that's happened on this project. It's not, it's not a dream project yet, but I think it's a better project. I think we've made progress on that, and that's great to see. I'm glad to see the university coming back and looking at this widening as something that is not simply a road widening project, but something that requires attention to all of the transportation users there, whether it's cyclists or walkers or folks who are walking from, nurses that are walking from the parking structures, everybody's and transit users. So I think that's, we've made progress on this design. It's a good step forward, and we may have some more comments as we move forward.
Councilmember Ghazi Edwin.
Thank you. Firstly, I'd like to thank city staff and, partners at U of M for helping to work on this resolution and just about this collaborative process. One thing that I did notice in reviewing it is there's nothing that explicitly states our commitment to and prioritization of safety and accessibility of non-motorized users, specifically, in accordance with our Vision Zero based comprehensive transportation plan. So I did create an additional whereas clause, which I sent to City Clerk Beaudry, who will share it with all of you now. And I want us to, just explicitly put into this resolution our commitment to these efforts, accessibility and safety. I think it's important that it's there and it's written down in black and white. Should I go ahead and read the additional?
Please.
So the additional whereas clause would be added after whereas clause number 6, and it states, whereas the city of Ann Arbor seeks to prioritize the safety and accessibility of non-motorized users as expressed in our Vision Zero-based comprehensive transportation plan.
Is there a second? Second by Councilmember Medina. Is that friendly to the body?
Okay, thank you.
Friendly to the body. Councilmember Ghazi Edwin, you still have the floor.
Yeah, thank you. I think this is important. And, I hope also we just kind of think about, and I know this is not something that we're going to include in this resolution, but as this process continues, how are we prioritizing safety of non-motorized users, of pedestrians? How are we evaluating that? To Councilmember Briggs' point earlier, and others around data, I think it's important. Thank you.
Councilmember Medina.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to express my gratitude for our ability to be able to have this conversation productively tonight. At least for me, this was one of our more difficult decisions that we've made during my time on council, because we were trying to weigh our city's transportation and safety goals with what we were being told by one of the most important health systems in the state was a need of theirs as well. And I don't think any of us, unfortunately, regardless of which side we voted on when this came up last time, were particularly happy with the outcome. And I've acknowledged this before, we are always at a bit of a negotiating disadvantage with the university because of our position and our nature as a public body and our adherence to the Open Meetings Act and all of the things that require us to have our deliberations here at this table while they can, negotiate with us, not necessarily that way. And so, in the interim here, I know that many of us have continued having conversations with campus and community partners. And since we've discussed this last, there have been a lot of new people added to the conversation. And so, we have 5 new people sitting here at this table. We have a new university president who had expressed his desire to strengthen our town-gown partnership. We have a new chair of the Board of Regents who lives here in Ann Arbor. And so, I know many of us have had conversations with members of the Board of Regents. I just want to actually thank Regent Brown, who I've spoken with several times over the last couple of weeks, for his willingness to support our coming back to the table and finding additional resources, and for staff for pulling this proposal together. I agree with Councilmember Briggs that this is an improvement. I think there are still some questions. I do have one more as well. I know that these are cost estimates right now because we still have to do some of this design work, and I'm looking at the resolution, and it seems pretty black and white on what we are approving in terms of width and also cost. And I guess, I've heard, Mr. Hutchinson, I think you said that we could potentially, move that back to 10.5 feet, or we still have the ability to add some additional. Are we approving, do we need to potentially modify this language to say at least? Are we approving a cost estimate here, or are we approving 10 feet and 13 feet specifically? That's how it reads as I'm reading it. And if we were to go back to doing these estimates and it comes in under, I would love for us to add additional width to that sidewalk as well, beyond even 10.5 feet. And so I know that that's not how things have been trending, but if that's how the money lays out, I want to make sure that we have that flexibility.
A couple of points. There was a lot of conversation around the dollars, but we had to have real numbers in order to frame the deal. So if we were talking in ranges and we were trying to figure out who was going to do what, we simply couldn't get there. If the way the agreement is structured, if the estimate were to come in lower than what's on the paper, then that savings accrues to the university, not the city, because they're putting in the lion's share of the money. The contingency that you see of $500,000, that was trying to take into account the passage of time that we still have to get through to do the rebid and actually to start construction in 2024. It's an engineer's estimate, but it's still an educated guess. So it'd be great if it came in lower, but if it did and we wanted to do more, that would still be on the city's nickel. We wouldn't be able to take the savings and put it towards something extra that would go back to the university.
Councilor Ackman, then back to Councilor Redima.
So I just want to echo the appreciation that people have expressed for the work of our city administrator and the university coming together to reconsider the original plan, and one that better balances the stated needs of the hospital system, the people that work there, and our residents who rely on this corridor. I really also appreciate all the people that wrote emails and spoke at meetings, as well as fellow council members Iyer and Briggs, who worked really hard on this issue when it first came up and continued to push us to do better in the intervening period. The staff resolution, as I see it, is an important incremental improvement that goes a significant way in addressing one of the primary concerns raised by the Transportation Commission, pedestrian and cycling advocates, residents, and hospital staff, which was the narrowing of the sidewalk on the west side. This new one keeps the west side at basically the same width while also providing 2 additional feet of space on the east side. That's good and important. Additionally, the university has agreed to pay for the additional widening associated with the pathways. This is appropriate. And further, I'm relieved that even the current design, there is no widening at the intersection with Fuller, keeping that crossing distance for pedestrians and cyclists the same as it is today. You know, I'm a little ambivalent with where we are today, and I'm coming in late, but it does seem like this has been a bit more fraught and difficult to get to this point than it needed to be, considering our stated values and policies. It feels like we started with an emphasis on adequate traffic flow and are glomming on improvements for pedestrians and cyclists. So going forward, I really want us to start with our commitment to Vision Zero and what that looks like. I do have a couple of resolved clauses, actually 3 that I would like to put forward for consideration. Should I do those separately?
I guess send them through and then we'll perhaps see.
Okay. The first one I think addresses just.
I'm sorry, have they been sent to?
No, but you want me to do that first?
Please,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, no problem.
Councilmember Ackman, you can send those to me, and
Okay.
then I'll forward them.
Okay. You have to wait on my bad Windows skills. So I'll go ahead and read the first one. The first one is an edit to the first resolved clause, and it says that the city supports the widening of the East Medical Center Drive Bridge to accommodate, and this is the edit, a safe barrier-protected path for non-motorized users on both the east and the west sides, with a width of at least 13 feet on the east side and at least, I put 10, I'd like to actually say 10.5 on the west side, that are consistent with federal and state guidance. And really, the 10.5 is about keeping it at least as wide as it is today. The second that I sent.
Let's deal with these things
Okay.
separately, I guess.
Yep.
Is there a second to that? Second by Councilmember Radina. Is there discussion on that? Councilmember Ackman, I guess you have the floor if you wish to go first, then Councilmember
Sure.
Briggs.
So this is really about emphasizing safety in this clause. We talk a lot about accommodating and making an accessible pathway for non-motorized users, and I thought it was important, as Councilmember Ghazi Edwin emphasized, to talk about safety. And then the barrier protection, I think, is important for the level of traffic that goes through here, and the fact that it's on a bridge and right up against a roadway. And then, as I said before, the width, I think it's important that we maintain at least the width that we have now on the west side. We have heard that time and again, and then today is 10.5. And so, I want us to try to get as much space as we can for pedestrians and cyclists. So if there's an opportunity to do that, that is not cost prohibitive, I want us to do that.
I think this, we're repeating, where the first resolved is an edit to an existing resolved?
Yeah.
Okay. I've got Councilmember Radina, then Iyer. I'm sorry, Briggs, my apologies. Briggs.
Yeah, thanks, and I appreciate the edit to 10.5 feet on the, in this resolved clause. I think keeping the existing, not reducing the size, the width of that sidewalk is really important, and certainly we heard last year that the cost of the beam would support maintaining that size of 10.5 feet. So I think this extra 6 inches is probably fair. I'm hoping it's safe to say that that's not going to increase cost. From what I've heard from the answers to the questions tonight, however, having a barrier, a railing such as we have on Broadway Bridge is likely to increase the cost of, on this bridge widening project. You'll recall that having a protected space was part of my resolution or amendment that I put forward last year, so it's, I'm certainly in support of that. However, what I'm not supportive of is the city paying any additional cost. So I do think that this is, I do think that that's something that's important. I think that is consistent with if you're trying to increase the size of space, that's not something that, that's just part of a widening project. If the university wants to do that, I am comfortable with not widening the bridge. I haven't seen any modeling to suggest that having 2 lanes in and 2 lanes out wouldn't accomplish our needs just as well as 1 lane, 2 lanes in and 3 lanes out. So I guess I'd like to have a tough conversation here around, where folks are at on this. I mean, in some ways would be comfortable with, I guess I'd like to have a conversation before understanding where I land on supporting this or not.
Councilmember Radina, then Iyer.
Thanks. I just had I think, a clarifying question again, but now that I'm reading this, so I want to make sure. So, Councilmember Ackman, we've talked about expressing at least 13 and at least 10.5. I think that I see the resolution just says at least 10. Could I opt?
She amended it to
Oh, okay.
verbally.
Gotcha. So, do we need to amend that again, or is that what was sent to me says 10?
Let's just acknowledge that as a scrivener's error, perhaps.
Okay. So a friendly amendment to at least 10.5. So I guess I just wanted to ask, clarifying as well back on my previous question, what I think I heard the administrator say is that essentially the terms of the current agreement from the or with the university, were the university agreeing to the design as it was reflected in the resolution, and anything, if there were any savings in that. They were not agreeing to a price point, they were agreeing to a design. And so if there were savings, even if we were to do these additional things, they would take their savings and go home, and we would cover the additional cost.
That's correct. Because the sort of, I won't say assumption, but the possibility that's looming out there that it could come back and be even more than 2 million that we talked about, and then we got to go back to the table and sort of start all over anyway on the money. But because the university is putting in considerably more of the 2 million in order to get the deal that's in front of you, if it was to come in less, it seemed fair that it would go back to them because they're paying the lion's share of the money to begin with.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Iyer.
Thank you. I'm definitely prepared to support this amendment, but I'm probably not prepared to support the overall resolution tonight, just because we don't know. We have a couple of pieces of information that I think are really critical that we just don't have yet. One is how much would that barrier cost? The other is the modeling for 2 in, 2 out. And it bothers me that still we are at this point where the city is having to absorb more and more costs just to protect pedestrians in what is going to become a more dangerous environment because of the widening that the university wants. Not that the city wants, the university wants. And, you know, I appreciate all the work that's been done. I do appreciate that Mr. Mahoney has worked so hard on this with U of M officials. I do appreciate that U of M officials were willing to come back to the table and negotiate. I'm just not sure that we are quite there yet because we're kind of where we were a year ago when, we were going to have to absorb the cost of extra widening for our pedestrians on that west side. And it's not just our pedestrians, it's the universities. I mean, we've heard throughout this process, we have heard from residents and nurses and other people who don't have the advantage of parking at the hospital, who park down on Wall Street and walk up. And I feel like we're fighting harder for those folks than the university is, which I find very frustrating. And I don't think that it should be on the city to bear even more of that cost, which is being brought on, the need for it is being brought on by the widening, which the university wants in the first place, and truly has not demonstrated to us that it's really necessary. So again, I'm going to support this, this amendment, but I'm just not sure I'm going to have all the information I need tonight.
Further discussion of the amendment? Councilmember Watson.
So, yeah, I think this is mostly probably to Mr. Hutchinson, but so as it stands now, the entrance to East Medical Center Drive from Fuller there's 1 lane in, 3 lanes coming out. So is that correct? So if we vote down this amendment now, we go back to the status quo, which is 1 lane in, 3 lanes out. The only lane that's added is a right turn lane coming, not widening with it either lane, but a right turn lane when you're coming into the hospital that occurs midway through the bridge and before the final crosswalk, correct? So I guess my question on that is, one, maintaining the bridge how it is, maintaining the bridge currently how it is, does that, is there a expected increase from adding an additional right turn, like adding just that additional right turn lane? What, like, I know that you don't have the traffic modeling, but what's the idea? What is the benefit seen from adding that additional right turn entering the hospital complex, I guess?
There's not a lot of immediate benefit for that. The longer term benefit is if the university does future work on their portion of East Medical Center Drive. And once you get past the bridge, all of that East Medical Center Drive is the university's road, not the city's. And I think they're, not to put words in their mouth, but I believe they're looking at being able to add capacity on East Medical Center Drive, beyond the bridge. So eventually that right turn would maybe be a through lane and not just a right turn lane.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Hutchinson.
For my part, I'm uncomfortable with this at this juncture. To put a little bit of this in context, as I see it, we have the leading regional trauma center asking us for an extra lane within the bridge that does not increase transit across the roadway for pedestrians, so as to accommodate their usage and their envisioned improvements and expansions and to the hospital complex. I'm willing to take that as sufficient. They have a vision for how the hospital will grow. Hospital growth is good for the city and the region. They have told us that this is useful to accommodate it. I'm willing to credit that. I would be comfortable with at least 13 and at least 10, having expressed our desire for an increase, an appropriate desire for an increase. I could probably live with at least 10 and a half. My goal here is not to do violence to the deal that the administrator has presented to us after extensive conversation with the university. I too wish that we had a safe, I wish that the path were barrier protected. Barrier protected is obviously stronger, but I also don't know whether it's practical in this context. I don't know whether it's practical as a matter of geometry or practical as a matter of cost. I suspect the geometry is fine. I have no idea with respect to the cost. If we could reference a request to the administrator to pursue barrier protection to that if it were consistent with our cost estimates, I would be comfortable with that as an exploration, but to require it here, in my view and understanding, throws out the earnest effort on the part of the university to reach common ground here, to themselves take the lion's share, to take on the lion's share of the costs of the city's change of direction. And to facilitate what I think is an appropriate improvement, and that is to say the expansion from current condition of the transit on the east, and to maintain, for all practical purposes, the transit on the west. I walk up and down stadium bridges all the time. There's no protected lane there. Cars are moving far faster than they are moving at East Medical Center Drive, and me and my dogs are fine there. I'd probably be rather walking on Broadway, but the grade change is, at least from my view, sufficient protection to make me content. Further discussion of the amendment. Right now, the amendment is a whole. let me suggest, if I can, that we break up, well, let's just have let's have a vote on the whole since it was presented as a whole. And then if it passes, and we'll take the resolution as there. If it fails, and we'll see what happens thereafter. Further discussion on the amendment?
Sorry, I just
yes, of
want to
course.
say, I can't, I don't know, I agree with the spirit of the amendment. It's the sticking point that Councilmember Briggs mentioned about a safe barrier protected. I mean, without a estimate for the cost or a path for getting there, I don't know that I can support, the amendment as written, calling for a safe barrier protected amendment. We don't know how much the city can contribute toward it and how much it's cost. And also, we know that it can't be in the roadway or the university will object to the rest of the deal. So that's my point on that.
Councilmember Briggs.
For my part, as Councilmember Iyer stated, I wouldn't feel comfortable with adding this. I wouldn't feel comfortable voting on this tonight. I think there's a need to postpone to get more information. We simply don't know what the costs associated are with this, and I certainly have a discomfort with assuming more cost for this, given the information that we have. So I think, I'm comfortable with moving forward with it tonight, getting more information, and making a decision at our subsequent meeting. I know there's a couple other resolved clauses. Otherwise, I would move to postpone so we could get that information. But I think we have some other resolved clauses that we want to discuss potentially before going through, suggesting a postponement. I would, I guess, on the point of this infrastructure, I think sometimes it can feel like, gosh, aren't we going a little bit heavy on this bridge? Aren't we doing just a little bit too much? This is really counter to this is city infrastructure. This is counter to what our transportation policies say. So when we're trying to do something that's really counter to what is laid out in our transportation plan, I think there's got to be good reasons for why we're willing to go that direction. We also know from the transportation plan that Fuller Road, which is fully city property, we have problems there. We have crashes. That's one of our high priority, I think, areas to determine how we improve for non-motorized transportation safety. So we're going to have to be determining how, on our side, we're improving that. We have no control over what the university does on their side. However, I hope that they have just as much commitment to this moving forward, to making sure that everybody is safe, to making sure that we have systems that actually, we talk a lot about LEED certified buildings, but 40% of our emissions are, I believe around that, are coming from transportation. So our infrastructure needs to support our climate work as well. And furthermore, this is a roadway leading to our premier health system. I would think that it would also want to communicate healthy behavior, because I'm sure every pamphlet in the university talks about activity. So, and furthermore, all of the concerns I've heard, almost all of them, are from people who work at the university.
Further discussion of the amendment? Councilmember Cornell.
I think it's really important that as part of the conversation, we recognize the value in terms of economic development that the university brings and contributes to our local economy. And we can't understate that. And I think the idea of the university continuing to grow in our community in ways that create jobs is really, really important to our economy. And I think if we take that and say, yes, we recognize that as a value and something that we aspire to, we also have to take into account that we need to be aspirational with our climate goals. I ran on a platform of making sure the city was walkable and bikeable. I ran on the platform of I walk to work every day. And so when we think about what it is that we want to accomplish citywide, this feels like a project to not trip on our own feet over. And I think to build on what Councilmember Briggs said, I would love for this premier facility in our city with traffic that comes in and out. We're talking about traffic here, to be a model of what we aspire to be and to inspire perhaps other cities to say, we should have this infrastructure too. Have you seen what they're doing in Ann Arbor? I think if we're going to profess to be progressives, we could and should do that, especially when we're talking about getting additional information that doesn't feel as though it's 6 months, a year out to be better informed with this decision. It seems it seems very important on so many levels to me.
Further discussion? Roll call vote on the amendment, starting with Councilmember Ghazi Edwin.
Councilmember Ghazi Edwin?
This is just on the amendment.
I'm sorry, yes, this is on the amendment as a whole, which, yes, is on the amendment as a whole, which would express support of the widening to accommodate the safe barrier protected path from unarmed users from the both east and west sides with a width of at least 13 feet on the east and at least 10.5 feet on the west.
Okay, thank you. Yes.
Mayor Taylor?
No.
Councilmember Iyer?
Yes.
Councilmember Ackman?
Yes.
Councilmember Briggs?
Yes.
Councilmember Cornell?
Yes.
Councilmember Dish?
Yes.
Councilmember Harrison?
Yes.
Councilmember Song?
Yes.
Councilmember Watson?
Yes.
Councilmember Medina?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Further discussion of the main motion. Councilmember Ackman, you stole the floor.
So now what am I doing in the second resolved? All right.
Please.
Thank you. All right, the second one emphasizes, and I think I heard Mr. Hutchinson reference this, so I don't suspect it will be a big deal to put this in there. Resolved that designs for pedestrian and cycling crossing points will be consistent with practices that improve safety for these users.
Is there a second? Seconded by Councilmember Iyer. Discussion?
If I may say a little bit more
Please.
About why I'm introducing this. We know that crossing points tend to be some of the places where pedestrians and cyclists are most vulnerable. They've expressed that they're vulnerable there today. I think that this is an opportunity to make sure that we're using the practices that we put forth in our transportation plan, the different tools that our staff has explored to do what we can as we redo the bridge.
Further, Councilmember Briggs?
Yeah, and I'm just going to offer this as a suggestion as this project moves forward, because this is not something that we have control over. But one of the pieces that I've been most concerned about is, obviously, at the intersection, the crossing distance doesn't increase, so that's good. However, the crossing distance at coming off of West Medical does increase. It's going across 5 lanes there. Now, we know that many folks who cycle through the area use West Medical, despite perhaps the university preferring that they wouldn't. They do use that as a safer route to access, as a route to North Campus and other destinations. And if you were trying to turn left from West Medical Center Drive onto East Medical Center Drive across the bridge, you're now under a proposed widening, you'd be crossing over more lanes, which of course is more challenging. And so I would hope that as the university is thinking about this in the future and their designs on that side, that they can also implement practices that will help to navigate that should we move forward with the widening.
Further discussion? Is that friendly to the body? Friendly to the body. Councilor Ackman, you still have the floor.
Last but not least, resolved, City Council directs the city administrator to continue working with the Michigan Department of Transportation to acquire the necessary easement to build an east-west pathway connection under the East Medical Center Drive Bridge.
Is there a second? Second by Councilmember Cornell.
Just a question.
Please.
For clarification. The agreement as it's currently structured indicates that the path underneath is a distinctly separate project. So it'll be on a different timeline, different budget, et cetera.
Yeah, I understand that. I think this was based on discussions with staff about just making sure that we make it known that we'd like the city to keep pursuing this, even though we've been kind of begged off from it. Because I think as part of the original exploration, it was to look at how how much this might cost and to design for it. And a memo came back saying, well, we can't really move forward right now because we're waiting for this easement assessment from MDOT. So that's really what this was about.
Understood.
Further discussion? Councilmember Iyer.
Thank you. Yeah, that was my first reaction too, and then in talking about it more with Councilmember Ackman, it seems to me that it's a good bookend to that discussion that we began as part of the bridge discussion. And so it's just a statement of our purpose to continue those discussions. So I'm willing to support this.
Further discussion? Is it friendly to the body? Friendly to the body. Further discussion of the main motion as amended? I think I had Councilmember Adina.
I asked my question during the amendment, so thank you.
You tricky person. I think I had Councilmember Briggs.
Well, I guess I'll use this as an opportunity to move to postpone until our next meeting, awaiting decision, more information regarding the cost of adding a barrier, a railing, something consistent with what we see on Broadway Bridge of that type, and also more information around kind of the modeling that's been done in terms of traffic patterns.
Further, move to our next meeting. Sorry, second by Councilor Iyer. Discussion of the postponement. Councilmember Dina.
I just wanted to ask staff, I mean, you've heard some of the questions that we have tonight. Does postponement to the next meeting give adequate time to get those answers? And what is our timeframe, acknowledging that this is already delayed for the construction cycle? Does this need to come back at the immediate next meeting if you need more time than that?
I'm not certain how long it'll take our consultants to put this together. I think to be safe, we might need to go 2 meetings out.
Is that friendly? Friendly?
Mayor Taylor?
Yes.
Unfortunately, under the most recent amendment to the Roberts rules, a motion to postpone definitely, which is what you're doing for a definite period of time, can only go to the next meeting. You can postpone again at the next meeting if necessary.
Huh. That's entirely inconsistent with at least 14 years of practice.
Why, thank you.
Well, we might have to, it's just so useful to switch that out. We may have to just adopt a new rule to that effect. Well, having heard that, all right, motion to the next meeting then. Further discussion of the postponement. All in favor? Opposed? It is postponed. CA3, resolution to approve a construction contract with Bailey Excavating, Inc. for the South Main Street Water Main Replacement and Resurfacing Project in the amount of $5,742,710.73, and to appropriate $2,811,000 from the Street Bridge Sidewalk Millage Fund, $436,000 from the Stormwater Fund, $46,000 from the Sewage Disposal Fund, $44,000 in Arbor Housing Commission funding, and $119,000 of funding from the Downtown Development Authority. Moved by Councilmember Briggs, seconded by Councilmember Iyer. Discussion, please, of CA3. Councilmember Briggs.
Yeah, I just wanted to start by, I just thought this was worthwhile to discuss very briefly. Supportive of this project moving forward. Appreciated the extra information the staff was able to provide ahead of this vote. It's good to know that that there's strong support from the business association to move forward with this right now. Some of the concerns had been around why we might not coordinate this project a little bit more, potentially with future streetscape improvements that might help enhance event space. And I think we've heard more about kind of the timeline that the DDA is on in terms of acquiring that information. So just wanted to give a little voice to the fact that I know this has been discussed in the community, and I'll let Councilmember Cornell say a few more words.
Councilmember Cornell.
Thank you. Thank you so much to the staff who spent time clarifying and answering questions and patience with me, at least, with some of the questions. I want to echo what Councilmember Briggs has said about our conversations with those in the business community, especially Main Street Area Association and the DDA, about this area, and hearing that the businesses there are supportive of it. And I think the other thing that was very important to me to hear is that this project would not, and would in fact be supportive of future developments that we might want to do. It would not exclude them, and I think that that was a really important part of the conversation for me to understand if down the road we would want to have better barriers for events, for more sort of permanent street closures, with barriers that don't have to be moved every night, and would be more protective. I think that that was an exciting part of that conversation, just to understand that while it might not be feasible down the road, it wouldn't exclude us having that conversation and doing that research. So, and I think the fact that the businesses on that street who will be most affected are giving us the thumbs up, that's pretty valuable feedback.
Further discussion? Councilmember Song.
We often receive questions as to how we prioritize our street improvements, whether it's in front of your own home or your own neighborhood. And I really like this reminder from staff in this resolution on the breakdown of where the funding comes from and how our priorities and change when funding allows for these improvements to happen. So I appreciate the acknowledgement of the impact being made from the sidewalk millage fund, so $436,000 from there, and the Affordable Housing Fund, so $44,000 from there. Our millages are working for our entire community to develop a network of improvements as funding allows. So thank you.
Further discussion? Councilmember Dish.
I have a question because I'm not on Transportation Commission, so I don't know as much about these things. Was there ever a point where we considered a curbless design? Yeah. Go ahead.
I can address that. No, that was never part of the scope of this. This project was always envisioned in the capital improvement plan as a water main replacement, and a resurfacing to get the pavement back into better condition. A curbless street design would really take the intensity of that project up to another level. It would have been a complete reconstruction. It would have the impacts to the surrounding area would have been much larger. Probably would have become a 2-year project. It would have been substantially more expensive as well. And that does not seem to have been supported by the adjacent business owners either.
Thank you very much. That's very clear.
Further discussion? Councilmember Briggs.
Yeah, I had wondered about that as well, because I had thought that I'd heard in Transportation Commission discussions from the consultant Smith Group that was working on some of the other people-friendly streets, that's what that's called, projects, that this was sort of next in line. It turns out, as Mr. Hutchinson said, that hasn't been formally considered, but the DDA did actually reach out early on to investigate that, and there wasn't interest in pursuing that at this time. And since part of the People-Friendly Streets projects is really to support the business community, it didn't seem like the right timing, and we're working on getting more information as well. So I was glad to know that those conversations had happened up front so that we could have coordinated these projects. You never want to come in and do 2 projects, a couple of years apart from each other in a business area or any area.
Further discussion? Okay. Councilmember Iyer. My apologies.
That's okay. So I wanted to address some of the criticisms that we've heard in the community, particularly from a former council member who, recently put out some information that's pretty anti-union, targeting this contractor, presumably because they happen to be a union contractor. And we heard those talking points parroted by a public commenter this evening. we did only receive one contract or one bid for this RFP. That happens. If you look back through the history of city bidding, it happens with a fair amount of frequency. And there are lots of reasons for that. There's only a number of contractors that do this type of large work. And depending on what they're juggling and what might be on their docket and what else they might have bid, there are times when we only get one bid. The idea that other contractors didn't bid this because the bid went to Bailey is ludicrous. Nobody knows who, as a contractor, you don't know who else is bidding for a contract until the bids are in and the bids are scored and the whole thing becomes public. So it's disappointing to hear this anti-union rhetoric coming from a former council member. It's not surprising, but I did just want to make those clarifications for the public because I think it's important.
Further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? It is approved with 11 council members present, thus satisfying the 8-vote requirement. We have no public hearings today. We have, however, the regular session meeting minutes of January 9, 2023. May I have a motion, please, to approve these minutes? Moved by Councilmember Radina, seconded by Councilmember Watson. Discussion, please, of A1. All in favor? Opposed? It is approved. C1, an ordinance to amend Chapter 103, Historic Preservation of Title 8 of the Code of the City of Ann Arbor by adding Section 8425.15, establishing the Robert and Irma Hayden House Historic District, 1201 Gardner Avenue. Moved by Councilmember Dish, seconded by Councilmember Song. Discussion, please, of C1. Councilmember Ackman.
I wanted to say a few words just because this is in the 4th Ward in Lower Burns Park, and I just learned about this as I was reading the agenda. Sorry to say I'm not up on my American poet history, but if you'll allow me, I'd love to read some of what was written in this about him. Robert Hayden was born in Detroit in 1913. After a traumatic childhood, he attended Detroit City College, then enrolled in the University of Michigan in 1941, where he won a prestigious Hopwood Award for aspiring writers. What's that?
He won it twice.
Oh, won it twice. Wow, thank you. After finishing his degree in 1942, Hayden taught at U of M for several years and was the first black faculty member in Michigan's English department. He taught at Fisk University for over 20 years, but he and Irma, his wife, returned to Ann Arbor to 1201 Gardner Street in 1969, where he taught at U of M until his death in 1980. During the tumultuous 60s, Hayden was criticized for refusing to call himself a black poet. He called himself an American poet, though he wrote some of the most powerful black history poems in the English language. In 1976, he was offered and accepted the position of poetry consultant to the Library of Congress, later called Poet Laureate, the first black American to hold this position. He accepted and was reappointed in 1978. I thought it was also worth pointing out that he moved to Ann Arbor in the 60s. That was not without challenges for the Haydens, as it was for many black families. As the report states, when searching for a house in Ann Arbor, the Haydens found limited options. Housing discrimination against African Americans was widespread, even though it was illegal. Another faculty member helped Irma and Robert find the Gardner Avenue house in Lower Burns Park, which they purchased in 1969. And upon their arrival, they were welcomed. Sounds like an amazing life.
Further discussion? We'll have a second reading of this at a subsequent meeting, but for the time being, I'm delighted as well to support it, and I'm glad that we're able to move it forward here today. Further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? It is approved. DC1, resolution to authorize settlement of Raziel Alvarez Rodriguez and City of Ann Arbor et al., Washoe County Circuit Court case number 21-001289. Moved by Councilmember Dish, seconded by Councilmember Radina. Discussion, please, of DC1. All in favor? Opposed? It is approved. DC2, resolution authorizing the City of Ann Arbor to be listed as a supporting municipality in the amicus brief to be filed in the United States Supreme Court in Biden v. Nebraska and Department of Education v. Brown. Moved by Councilmember Ghazi Edwin, seconded by Councilmember Dish. Discussion, please, of DC2. Councilmember Dish.
I'm really happy to see us, I think we've already done this, right? We're approving this? Yep, in any case, I'm very happy to see us doing this. I wanted to make sure that it's clear that we are signing on to a brief that's filed by the Public Rights Project on behalf of 40 local governments in 24 states. It is completely right and appropriate that we sign on to this brief, particularly as many of the other governments that participate in this, we are home to a large, expensive, leading research university whose students suffer debt burdens. I see that in my other job. So the Public Rights Project asked that we sign on, and I am very pleased that we did.
Further discussion, Councilmember Radina.
Well, without repeating everything that Councilmember Dish said, I too want to just express my gratitude for us taking this step, and I want to thank our city staff who are going to do all of the work to file this brief, and would ask to be added as a co-sponsor, please.
Further discussion? Following up, this is, of course, a brief in support of the Biden administration's efforts with respect to student loan forgiveness. It's something that's a long time coming, and it's shocking that it should be opposed in court and elsewhere. I'm delighted that we as a municipality are able to do our small part by signing on to this amicus brief. Further discussion? Councilmember Dish.
I also would like to be added as a co-sponsor. Thank you.
Further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? It is approved. Do we have a closed session today?
Yes, Mayor, I am requesting a closed session under MCL 15.268E to discuss pending litigation titled Attorney General et al. And City of Ann Arbor et al. V. Gelman Sciences in the Michigan Court of Appeals, case number 357599, and Washtenaw County Circuit Court case number 88-34734. Thank you.
May I have a motion, please, to go into closed session for the foregoing reasons? Moved by Councilmember Cornell, second by Councilmember Ackman. Discussion? Roll call vote, please, starting with Councilmember Ghazi Edwan.
Councilmember Ghazi Edwan?
Yes.
Mayor Taylor?
Yes.
Councilmember Iyer?
Yes.
Councilmember Ackman?
Yes.
Councilmember Briggs?
Yes.
Councilmember Cornell?
Yes.
Councilmember Dish?
Yes.
Councilmember Harrison?
Yes.
Councilmember Song?
Yes.
Councilmember Watson?
Yes.
Councilmember Radina?
Yes.
Motion carries.
We are in closed session. Where are we? Upstairs?